So I'm here with the Dean of the Advanced Manufacturing School at Daley College, and he's going to take us on a tour of the facility here. And as you walk down the steps, as we're about to do, this is what the facility looks like, and he's going to take us into different areas. So Dave, take us on the tour.
All right, great. Let's go for a walk, and we're going down the stairs into our manufacturing building, and this is a bridge that connects our main building, which has traditional classrooms, cafeteria, gym, and admissions, things like that, with our manufacturing building. So this is the lobby, and through the windows you can see some robots we use for training, and then there's other full-size manufacturing equipment throughout that high bay area, set up similar to a manufacturing plant. So you start to get that feel as you're in your classes, as well as get the hands-on experience on full-size manufacturing equipment. And then as we walk over here, we have kind of a student lounge area. So, really inviting, open area. Students hang out here before class, after class. All right, we're going to be going into room 114. This is our fluid power room. All right, so fluid power. Teach two topics in here, fluid power as well as mechanical skills. We'll talk about both of those. All of our classes, students taking these classes will learn about the theory of operation as well as the safety issues related to these technologies in each of these different classes. And they'll learn about personal protective equipment that's utilized in industry when you're working with these technologies. So just to talk about fluid power a little bit, could be pneumatics, could be hydraulics, are two different versions of fluid power. Students will learn what the different elements of a pneumatic or hydraulic circuit are, whether it's a cylinder or a valve or a motor or a flow control, etc. How to read the different gauges. But the idea is to understand what the components are, how they work, and then to start to learn how to troubleshoot circuits if you're going to be a industrial maintenance technician. So that's fluid power. And then mechanical drive systems on this side of the room. And students will come in and see all this equipment and be maybe a little bit overwhelmed or intimidated by it. But we're taking students from all different walks of life, whether they're fresh out of high school or career changers. They might not know the names of different tools. All right, now we're going to be going into our industrial electricity lab. This would be the first class in industrial electricity that a student would take. And the idea in this room is that you're starting to learn about the different names of the components and then the theory behind electrical circuits. And we can see, the instructor's got motors, different states of disassembly. But with this trainer, all of these components that are up on this panel are magnetized. And basically what a student will do in a different lab is, after you've learned about what the components are, is you would wire up circuits with it. And you would use, jumper cables to learn about parallel circuits, series circuits, what all the different components are and what functions they serve. And this is at a small, low voltage, low current, so it's very safe. And then you'll learn about a multimeter and what all the different markings on the dial mean and how to use that. And so you're starting to learn how to not only put the circuits together, but how to troubleshoot them and understand. And there's a little bit of math involved. There's some formulas associated with electricity to understand the relationship between resistance, voltage, and current in an electrical circuit. All right, so if that last lab was the first class, this would be maybe your third class in industrial electricity, moving to programmable logic controls, also known as PLCs. So students love this class. By this time in their training, they've taken a number of classes, they've learned about the different components in an electrical circuit, and in this class, they're starting to learn how to apply these concepts. And so if you can get a shot of this, this is what's known as a PLC, or programmable logic controller. So this is actually a computer that's used in industrial equipment, and then there's inputs and outputs. And so automation is based on devices like this, industrial computers. And so you learn as a student how to program this, how to assemble this, and then the task that they're doing here is programming it so that the lights light up depending on which switches are flipped. And you learn how to use a laptop to do the programming, how to connect the laptop to the computer, upload programs, download programs, etc. And then what makes this fun is you start to see how these concepts are applied in industry. So we're going to go back to this device in the back corner. So similar to the piece of equipment we were just looking at, this is a PLC, programmable logic controller, and this has some additional devices connected to it. It has a touch screen, more push buttons, an emergency stop. But what all this is doing is operating a Ferris wheel. So if you can just imagine a piece of equipment in industry, but this is an example with the Ferris wheel. So with these controls, you can program the direction of the Ferris wheel, forwards, backwards. There's lights that can come on and off. There's safeties associated with keeping the protective guard in proper position. And then there's the different speeds and things like that. So all of the different functions that you might see in an industrial piece of equipment and control, you're utilizing here on a, interesting, fun example, and you start to get the idea that these controls are used on all kinds of equipment, including, a Ferris wheel. All right, so that was, a few of our labs and the classroom spaces. Now we're going to be entering into our high bay space where we have the full-size equipment. And then this is just a locker room. Students can store their backpacks, jackets, and things like that as they're preparing for their labs in the high bay. So I'll let you just get a, pan the shop, and then we'll go back to those red curtains, and that's our welding area back there. That's our pet dinosaur. That's a welding class put together.
This is very impressive. And once again, I just want to say this is an enormous room. It goes all the way down there, and it's filled with equipment. Everywhere you look, there's pieces of equipment.
Yep.
Very neat and organized. I see there's helmets up here, and the smocks. Floors are nice and clean. It's impressive.
Yeah, so this is what we're trying to say, that manufacturing has got to this level that to be competitive, manufacturing needs to be safe, it needs to be efficient, and there's no better way to do that than when it's clean, organized, everybody knows where things are at, and so that they're working, being productive, not straightening up and things like that. So this is our welding lab. So if you come to our school, and I know a lot of community colleges do this, that we'll see what's behind the curtain here, but you're going to learn in your first few classes about welding safety and how to set up the machine. But within the first couple classes, you're going to be out here seeing a demonstration by an instructor, and then following their instructions to set up and start to do practice welds. And we do this a couple different ways. We teach MIG first. That's a certain type of welding. Now that's the MIG welder right there, and then this is the welding gun or whip. There's a lot of different nicknames for it, but you'll learn about all the different components and how to do a little bit of preventative maintenance on the welder itself. This is just something a student did. You can see different welds. These are not very good welds, but they're practicing and they're making use of the material, and but doing different. So these are really bad welds. So this student is putting something together here to practice, but it's going to eventually just be scrapped out, and then the material will be reused. And there's a lot of other edges here that can be welded on after this is taken apart to be reused. Something like this, students collaborated with the class that was learning how to cut material out on our plasma cutter, and then the welding class put it together and welded it. So try to make it fun and interesting, but different carts, racks, and then fun things like that put together. So these are our manual lathes and manual mills and manual drills. So one of the pathways we talked about is CNC machining, and but we feel that to be a really good CNC machine operator, you need to know how that equipment works and how the material is cut and reacts and the concepts behind it. And so we have a manual machining class built into our program where you learn about manual lathes and mills. So a lathe, real simply, is that your material gets held in the spindle rotates. And here's an example. So this would have been held in these jaws, and that rotates. And then your cutting tool is held here, and then these dials move the cutting tool in and out to cut your shaft or handle or whatever it might be out of your piece of aluminum material. So as a student in these classes, like the other labs we talked about, you'll learn about the safety, what the hazards are involved with this equipment, and a little bit about the theory. But then you're going to be out here with your instructor, who is an expert in this equipment, who can then show you how this works, and then you're going to be trying to make small projects on this equipment as part of your class. So that's a lathe. And then the other basic type of equipment is a mill. And so in a lathe, the material is what's rotating. In a mill, the material is held in a vise. And then the spindle, which can hold a drill, an end mill, and different tools to mill out your piece of material. I'll grab a sample of a project. So we all know what a drill is. It can drill a hole, but a mill can also cut sideways and cut things like these grooves in this block of aluminum. And you can see it also milled this entire face off. So a real basic piece of equipment used in manufacturing. And most maintenance departments will have a machine like this and a machine like that lathe. And companies will want their maintenance technicians to know how to make the needed pieces to keep their equipment running on a machine like this. So we've looked at a couple different electrical labs, that introduction to industrial electricity. We looked at the programmable logic controller lab. This is our motors and controls lab. So here now, safety really becomes of primary importance. This is 3-phase electricity, 208 volts. So you have to know what you're doing. So it's, you've gone through a few classes in electricity. We focus on lockout, tagout, which is a very common safety process in manufacturing to make sure that all the energy sources associated with the piece of equipment are safe and to allow somebody to work on it, as well as now you're working on full-size components that are part of electrical systems that control equipment. You're wiring up the circuits, learning how to troubleshoot those circuits, and just an example, when you press a start button, if it's not wired up correctly, you can press the start button, the motor or whatever you're starting might turn. But when you take your finger off the button, the motor might stop. You have to have what's called a latching circuit, so it's a special wiring of the different components and special contactors that are involved in that, and that's what you'll learn about in this class. All right, so this is our CNC lab, computer numerical control. We have lathes and mills that are computer controlled here, and we have the non-credit 12-week program, but these are also part of our credit progression of classes. So I can open the door. Yeah, so if you're looking at the control panel here in the class, you're going to learn what all the buttons mean. It's kind of a different language. You have to learn what all the symbols mean. You're going to learn how to read the program, how to safely start up the equipment. And then you're going to learn, these are all the different types of tools that can be put in the machine. You're going to learn how to assemble these tools, how to load them in the machine, and how to make parts on a machine like this. So the material would be held in this vise. Your tools would be in the spindle, and you're going to learn how to load programs, make parts, inspect those parts to make sure they're made to the blueprint, because that's what manufacturing really is at the core, is making things to requirements, which is typically a blueprint, and then adjusting the machine if it's not making them to the blueprint, so that you learn from your mistakes and make parts that are within specification. And then this particular brand of equipment is Haas. Many companies have Haas, but there's a lot of different manufacturers of CNC equipment out there, And so we teach you the basics so that if the company you're going to work at does not have Haas, you'll understand the language in the program, what the different safety issues are, and you quickly be able to come up to speed with the equipment that your company has. All right, and then, when you hear about manufacturing these days, you very commonly hear about robotics and automation. So we've incorporated robotics as one of the first 4 classes students take in our program. And FANUC is a very common name. It's the most common name of industrial robot. There's numerous manufacturers of industrial robots, but we want to teach you on the most common equipment. This green one happens to be what's called a collaborative robot, and so that means that it has additional sensors so that if it's operating and, for example, it bumps into somebody, it'll actually stop and be able to be restarted very easily. So let's go look at this yellow one over here. And so this is what's called the robotic pendant. You're going to learn what all the buttons mean and the controls and how to shut it down if there's an emergency. There's safeties that you have to hold on to on the back. But you're going to learn how to, the theory of operation of the robot, the way it moves, what the different axes are called, things like that. And so this is about the size of a human arm, so they call it a robotic arm. And it has a joint here, another joint, another joint, another joint, and then a rotation joint here. And it also has a camera built into it. And then this is a gripper that opens and closes and can pick things up like this marker. And then there's different ways you can program this, and you'll learn how to program it through the pendants as well as offline in a simulation environment on a computer where you bring the program out to the robot to tell it how to move. So robots are being implemented at all different types of manufacturing, whether it's food, plastics, metals, etc., automotive and fabrication, so all different types of manufacturing. So we want to teach the various situations, and what you're seeing now is different ways robots are using it. This particular one, a robot is being used to load and unload a CNC machine. So as you're progressing in your career in CNC machining, you might start out by operating the machine, but then eventually you'll be operating what's called a cell, which includes multiple machines and possibly a robot. And so in this case, the robot is loading and unloading the CNC machine, and you'll learn how to adjust the robot, start it up if there's a fault, shut it down if there's a problem. But most importantly, over time in a robot, many times things change and you need to adjust the positions of the robot or how it's picking the part up and things like that. And you'll learn how to make those minor adjustments in the function of the robot. So students love these courses. I typically see the students hanging out after class, asking for additional time. And usually they're down with the control, trying to be really accurate in the position of the robot and getting it just right. So it's a very interesting topic, and the skills you learn in these classes can be used in, whether you're involved with CNC, welding, industrial maintenance, or supervision within a manufacturing plant.
We've just finished our tour of it's showing you our tour of the Advanced Manufacturing Center at Daley College. And so I asked the dean, Dave, who's been our guest on this, if he had a student that had come through the program and would be willing to talk with us about how it's impacted their lives. And so, Dave, if you would take a moment to introduce our guest who's going to sit with us and share a little bit about going through the program and how it's had an effect on them.
Sure. I'd like to introduce Kenny. Kenny I've gotten to know Kenny over the last couple of years. When I come in the morning, I notice somebody sitting at the table reading his books and studying and asking for some additional lab time. And then, since then, I've gotten to know Kenny and thought he would be a really good representative for this discussion.
Well, Kenny, welcome. First of all, thank you for your time to be here to do this with us. And I'd just like to start real simple and ask, I know that you're a Chicago guy, so could you tell us a little bit about kind of the part of the city that you grew up in, and maybe were, going to school, the things that you were involved in?
Okay. I'm from the west side of Chicago, 75 blocks away from Daley College. I live on the other end of Pulaski. Um, I've been in Chicago all my life. I went to a university in 1991, and that wasn't really what I should have done. But when I ran across Daley College, I knew it was the place. And Daley College at the time was teaching classes in a barracks like structure. It felt like a job there because the machinery looked like a job, a machinery that a job would have right now. And so I fell in love. But make a long story short, I did 12 and a half years, come home with a plan, and I reintroduced myself to Daley College. And when I came home, I seen this beautiful, magnificent building, orange, yellow, bright lights. And it fascinated me. Came and enrolled and got to know Dave and been bugging Dave ever since.
So, Kenny, you had experience seeing what the Daily College was before, and then you go away for a long period of time, and you come out, you re-engage with Daily, and you walk into this 50,000 square foot advanced manufacturing center. How did that affect you? What was your impression when you saw what it looked like?
I was in awe. It's the difference between night and day of the old with the new. The old, you're dealing with solid state. This new generation of building right now, fully automated. Um, the ability to see the future, robotics, learning actuators and sensors, and even the simplest of CNC work, welding, all this is incorporated in the mechatronics program, which one can use and apply. Um, if you look at the job market on Indeed, there's a great demand for industrial maintenance mechanics and technicians. And Daily College will prepare.
So, Kenny, that's the program you selected,
Yes, sir. Mechatronics, yes, sir.
and you started going there. There was pretty much every day during the week.
This was right after the coronavirus onset, so it didn't really get a chance to fully function because of the separations and the guidelines of corona. But they were still trying to host the class, and it was hard to try to host a class when you had so many limitations. But I was here. Every chance I got, I was here. The school was empty, but they were still functioning. And now you see students in the hall. I mean, the machinery was still being ran. We were still acquiring knowledge. Um, with this mechatronics program, real quick, when I came home in 2020, I had a manufacturing job, but I was packing. And I quit that job because that wasn't for me. And I told myself I need to get back to Daly. And I didn't know what I was getting into when I came back, but I know Daly had what I needed. And I wanted to finish up what I started. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I'm glad I made that choice. 2020, I'm gonna just give you in 4 years how my pay rate increased. 2020, I made $2,862 for my income tax. 2021, I made $18,459 and some change. The next year after that, 2022, I made $71,191 and some change. And in 2023, in only 10 months, I made $85,807. So for my comfortability, I had to make a lot of sacrifices to be committed and dedicated to a program that I know in 4 or 5 years, I will see my residual dividends. I will see where I put my hard work.
You know, I'm not a young guy, but if I were a young guy, I would say that that's one of those drop the mic moments when you were kind enough to share what your income history has been. Because remember, our focus right now is talking to the men and women on the inside. And of course, we want their families to listen to this and any other interested parties. But the men and women on the inside who are thinking about where am I going to get a job that I can make enough money to be able to live the life that I really want to live for myself and for my family and what have you. So when you share something like that, I mean that says all really we need to know that if I get involved in And one of the things that Dave has done in the first segment here is talk about that this is not just about, certainly it's about Daley College, but it's not just about Daley College because there's community colleges throughout the country that offer programs that are available to us when we release so that we can get into something that puts us on that career pathway to make a living, that we can afford those things. And at one point, I'm sure over 13 years, when you laid on the rack, you were just thinking about how in the world am I going to have money for an apartment? How am I going to have money for a car? How am I going to have money that I can, do the things that maybe someday take a vacation or whatever it might be. And now you're living proof of taking that pathway and where it's brought you to. So that I congratulate you on that, first of all, but second of all, I think it's wonderful for our audience to hear that.
Augie, can I talk to my constituents for a little bit? Because I want them to let them know the reality. It's not going to be easy. You have to prepare while you're on the inside. You have to have a definite chief aim, a goal in terms of what you want to do and how you want to do it. You have to write it down, not just talk about it, but write down some goals. So it's like a scrimmage game. You practicing and you practicing and you're practicing before you actually get in the game. After 12, this is my first time being incarcerated. I was a law-abiding citizen, did everything right, and I had a gift. God blessed me with everything. But to succumb to a emasculated state and have to do 12 and a half years, it brought a lot of pressure on me, my family, my friends, my support. So to come home, not knowing where I'm going to get my next check, how I'm going to get a job, where I'm going to work, I've always been mechanically inclined. So it could be someone who's wanting to take nursing, someone who wants to do culinary arts. You have to tell yourself and ask yourself, are you going to be for real with this? Because once we hit those streets and get a sense of fresh air and a sense of freedom, we forget what happened. We forget when we were in those cells, lonely, depressed, in situations that you have to borrow a noodle if you need it. So when you get into this real life situation, the scenario, you tell yourself, I want to go to school. You tell yourself that, and then you put yourself into that position. You go up to that school, you meet someone like Dave, like you, hey, this is what I want. And you have to stand on that. And it's going to be a lot of obstacles. But if it was easy.
Well, listen, Kenny, thank you for sharing that, because yours is even more challenging than many because of the pandemic, right? You shared with us that when you started this, it wasn't even like you were going to the school where there were bodies everywhere, people doing things. You made additional sacrifices because of the pandemic, but it makes the reward that much sweeter. So I will say, from a big picture, because you and I have just met within the last 30 minutes or so, right? But from a big picture, what we do, we're Second Opportunity, and we provide courses on the inside. And if you're watching this, we probably are in your facility. If we're not, we want to be there. Just reach out to us so we can make that happen. But the courses on the inside, a major focus is on identifying what type of careers I might be interested in that are going to require me getting additional training or education or whatever it might be. But one of the real challenges is I don't even know what's out there. I've been away a long time. I don't know any of these new technology things you're talking about, or any of these new fields. And that's one of the things that we try to bring in there. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have Dave as a guest on the podcast. We walked through the actual facility and he's explaining this is our CNC, and here's how that works, and here's the robotics, and here's how that. So that's one of the things we want to do, is raise awareness of all these great opportunities that are out there. But as you said, at the end of the day, it's the individual making that commitment to themselves to say, when I get out, this is the path I'm going to put myself on.
One more thing, Augie, and I'm not no spring rooster. I have some age on me, and I'm from the old school. Give me a book, some paper, and a pen and a pencil, and I can go to work. But after 12 and a half years, technology has changed. And that was my only setback, is trying to do schoolwork on a computer that I really don't know how to maneuver. And it's very discouraging. But You have assistances. And when people get home, they have these things called phones. If nobody, not the flip phones, but we talk about phones that you like many processing computers that you can type up any information. So we cannot find excuses why we can't succeed. There's no excuse once you're on this side. We have access to information. It's not like you have to put in every Thursday to go to the library, and depending on the CEO, if he let you out to sell, you have to go through some books. No, you have access to information at the tips. My hands are rough. So there's no excuse. Once we get into these environments, all the assistance, we have to just show up. The assistance is here.
And I will say that one of the things that we talk about all the time is coming out. I believe we need to make the commitment to ourselves to say that I will not be afraid to ask for help, because there's too much that's happened. I had the same thing, right? I briefly tell the story that I was in a class, and the first half of the class, I was in person. First half of the class, I couldn't figure out how to get on the Wi-Fi. I was ready to drop the class. I was so frustrated, and there was this girl in front of me who saw I was struggling, didn't know what I was struggling with. She didn't know my background. She didn't know I just gotten out of prison 60 days before, and so it's like a break. And she said, "Hey, can I help you with something?" And I said, "Man, I can't figure out how to get on the Wi-Fi." And believe it or not, I literally got an email from this girl like 2 weeks ago saying, "Hey, just checking up on you. How you doing?" But the point is, when we walk out, we've got to be willing to ask for help. We've got to say, "Hey, I've never worked with Excel, or I don't know how to use a Google search," and that's okay. There's no shame in that. The shame is if we don't ask for help.
I got to say, that's one thing
Yeah.
you've done really
Yeah.
well, is learn how to find
Right.
all those resources
Yes.
and ask questions and know where to go.
Augie, one thing, because sometimes we don't want to open up, and coming from an environment for like the penal system, there's a trust issue. Can I really trust these people? You don't know people. So, and then you have this old baggage of, I don't need to open up. I want to just come in and then leave quietly. But it comes to some point, you have to let people know you so they can see where they can best assist you. And that's one of the best things, not only Dave, but Dave is just a microcosm of probably many school systems where they have a great individual leader who's going to be there, who's going to yield anytime, any day, any night to assist. And one thing about it, to micromanage, I don't need to really do this, but I have people that's working with me that can assist you better. And that's one of the best things about, but it won't come to you. People are not going to sit back and say, "Hey, you need some help?" You have to speak up. I'm learning a lot of technology by these young guys, these 19 and 21-year-olds. And this is, honestly, I still don't know how to go through.
Your classmates, right?
Yes, the classmates, my brothers and sisters. But you have to give yourself that opportunity to let people know you. And then the truthfulness and your genuineness, people are going to see you. People know when you're phony.
Well, listen, I want to thank both of you. I think that this is going to be a very popular. It's going to be 2 episodes, but really, it's just one podcast broken into 2 parts. But I think it's going to be really popular, and more important than that, I think it's going to bring a lot of great information on the inside to those who really need that information. Things they hadn't heard of before, maybe they never thought about. They've driven past a community college in their area 1,000 times and never thought about what's going on the inside, or how could that fit into my future. So this has really been, I think, a meaningful conversation. Kenny, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and to be so candid with the men and women on the inside, speaking about how this has made such a huge difference in your life. And Dave, I appreciate you, and I appreciate our relationship, and I appreciate that you've been willing to be so cooperative in allowing this to happen.
Yes.
Absolutely. I want to thank Kenny for
Thank you, Dean.
explaining everything he did today, being as open as he is, and then just really congratulations, Kenny, on your success and that upward pathway that you
I love
explained
Dave,
so
y'all.
well.
Dave has been there for me, and I want to just 2 minutes of letting my constituents know, give yourself a chance. It's rough out here in society. It's rough the economic situations, what's going on. Don't fall victim to worrying about who's coming across the border. Don't worrying about who's making better decisions in the political arena. You have to focus on what's more important to you. Figure out what can you do as a career, as a hobby, and let that be your main focus. If you're going to use media, don't get on the TikTok and all that. No, focus on yourself. Focus on yourself. And I guarantee you, you will succeed. You will succeed. Nothing else matters. No friends, who's hanging out at whatever club party. None of that matters right now. When you're gaining your freedom, you have a lot of catching up to do. But take your time and be ready for the fight, because it's going to be there. And the fruits of your labor, you will see that. You're going to make your friends, your parents, your loved ones proud of you. You're going to make the Mr. Augie and the Dean Daves who supported you, they're going to smile because they're not reaping the benefits, but they see the hard work that they put in. They've laid the groundwork for me to be here. So give yourself that opportunity. Sacrifice, commitment, and dedication is all you need.
Again, thank you both very much. Appreciate you and your time. And I'm looking forward to getting this one released and letting the men and women on the inside and their families see what this is about. This is great stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Augie.
Thank you. Take care.